Go live. Go live. Are we live? Hello? Oh no. I think something's wrong. Am I live? I am? How come I'm not? Sorry, I'm just standing here like looking at myself because my YouTube preview studio. Oh gosh, what a dork. It says I have an error in my like live preview window is showing just like an error and not my stream. But you can see me. You can see me and you can hear me. Okay, well, welcome. Hello. We can't ever, why can't we ever just kick one of these off without just like an awkward, weird beginning? That would just be too much to ask. Yay, Brandy, yay, welcome. I'm so happy to see you. I'm so glad you could join us live. Hello, Jesse and Mark and Shoshona. Okay, welcome. I don't know why we're not getting a good playback, but that's okay. I'm sure there's still everything that we need here. Hello, welcome. If you're catching us on the replay on YouTube, you can skip over all of that awkwardness by using the chapters that I have included below. You can jump ahead, you can bounce around. If you've been considering joining us live, maybe you usually drive home at this time or you cook dinner, you can always sign on to YouTube, pull up the YouTube app, plug in your headphones and just have it playing in the background like a podcast while you do stuff. And then you can make sure you're here for the live Q&A at the end, which I think is one of the best parts of doing this. All of these weekly live broadcasts are also saved here on YouTube to a little playlist, so you can jump around, find previous topics, and most are also released as weekly podcast episodes over on my podcast Between Meals. You're just an idiot, Mark, just not me. We're good. We have sound. We have video. We are here. And people showed up. That was my other concern. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, leave a comment on the main video post, and of course, as always, I appreciate it when you share my content and my videos with anyone else who you think might benefit from the content I share. I feel a little disheveled because I thought for sure I wasn't live, and so everybody was just staring at my weird little face. All right, well, welcome. It's Wednesday, which means Balanced Wellness Wednesday with Beth. How's everybody doing? Is everybody feeling good? Is everybody excited? If you're new here and we've never met, hi, I'm Beth. I'm a certified functional nutritionist. I'm certified in functional nutritional therapy and nutritional psychology. I am a 500-hour registered yoga and toucher. And what is happening? Oh no, it's going to be one of those weeks. Yoga instructor, not in toucher. I'm a yoga instructor. I'm a mindfulness coach. I'm currently completing my CPT with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And I just help all of my clients and all of the folks I work with to navigate their mindset and behavior changes with compassion, grace, and ease. I'm excited to connect with all of you. I'm not a toucher, not when I'm not supposed to be. I'm excited about these weekly series and just getting to touch base with all of you and just this opportunity to learn and grow and dig deeper into all things habit change, mindset, mindfulness, nutrition. And every week we have a different topic, as you probably notice if you've been joining me or catching the replays, and hopefully lots of space to ask questions and to share. Today we're going to be talking about something that gets asked very frequently in my space, and that is, where do we start? Especially when it can feel really daunting and overwhelming or just so big. How many of you have ever felt this way? Like, I know I need to make some changes. I know there's some things I need to add or remove, or some improvements I need to make, or some behaviors I need to change. Hello, JBX, welcome. I'll take late. How many of you have felt this way before? Like, just that everything feels ginormous and you don't know where to start. And it feels so overwhelming that you feel almost stuck, like in quicksand. Today's episode is inspired by a question that came in when I did my most recent Instagram Q&A that I love to do whenever I remember, usually every weekend. I love to answer your questions and check in with all of you. And it was asked by a really good friend of mine. And I just was like, you know what? This is a great question to answer more in depth here on the weekly broadcast. I'm getting some yeses and some hand raises. Before we get started, I do actually need to remember to do this here on YouTube to just offer a little disclaimer that the content that I share here is for informational and educational purposes only. It is never meant to substitute medical advice or diagnosis, so you should always contact your own doctor or your own nutritionist before you make any significant changes to your diet or to your fitness regimen. And all of the content shared here is just based on my own research and clinical experiences. And of course, individual needs always vary, and what works for one person may not work for another. And if you are looking for one-on-one support, please reach out to me via the links provided below. You know where to find me. Hello, David. Welcome. So glad to see you here. So I'm excited to dive in. So I asked if you've ever felt the sort of weight of the overwhelming sort of looming things you need to change and work on, bearing down on you. That like super familiar sensation where you're like surrounded by a sea of shoulds, right? Like the shoulds, as I always say, stop shoulding all over yourself. And that like the path almost feels kind of like in a dream sequence. Like it's almost like foggy and fuzzy and totally dauntingly unclear. And it just feels so big. It's that feeling when you're just surrounded by a whirlwind of things and tasks and goals and aspirations, and it just doesn't feel like there's a clear path forward. So if you've ever found yourself standing at that crossroad of kind of, I should be doing this, and where on earth do I even start? I think the biggest thing I want you to take away from tonight is you're not alone. It's probably the number one thing I hear from people when they start working with me or they're considering working with me or first sign on to one of the groups I coach is that it just feels so big. It feels so overwhelming. And I think it's this paralyzing feeling that for a lot of us stops us in our tracks before we get started and keeps us from taking whatever the crucial first step is. So if it found, what is happening to the mouth tonight? I think I spent too much time alone today. If this sounds too familiar, you're in the right place, and we're going to dive head first into all of this. So buckle up. Let's get our slides going. We're at the end there. So let's start at the beginning of I'm just so overwhelmed. So where do I even start? And then, of course, as always, before I forget to remind you, at the end, we have a little space for Q&A. And I also want to do some kind of real-time coaching in terms of if you're like, hey, I know what my goals are. I know what I need to work on. I just need some help on where to get started. I would really love to be able to offer that to you. And I have a couple of folks that wrote in some questions that we're going to answer that might also help you specifically. David said, like, I should be watching this while clearing the space around my exercise bike. I love dual purpose activities. 2 birds, 1 stone. All right, so let's turn the overwhelm into an opportunity and take our first steps and sort of think about it. So here's the thing, the specifics of where to start. I think this is the most important thing that makes answering this question of where do I get started really, really challenging to answer, because the specifics on where to start and what to start with, how to pave your path, they're going to be as unique as each and every one of you who are here or listening to the replay. As unique as each of you are, the things that you're going to do, the actions you're going to take, the steps you're going to take are going to be as unique as you. They're shaped by your personal goals. They're shaped by your core values. They're shaped by what you are feeling personally ready, able, and willing to tackle. And I can't answer that for each of you, and you may not yet be able to answer that for yourself. But again, I hope tonight will offer you some clarity on maybe how to do that. So of course, while I cannot, as much as I would love to, and I would be a millionaire, billionaire if I could do this, I can't offer a one-size-fits-all solution to first steps to take. But what I can promise you is that today, while I'm kind of diving deep into the heart of overcoming this overwhelm, I'm also going to give you some practical advice that will hopefully help you to gain some clarity in your journey, as I said. So stay with me, because we're going to kind of unlock some of those secrets and maybe even talk about some things you've never considered if you are feeling stuck and not sure where to start. And we're just going to set the stage for some transformation and kind of maybe turn some of this overwhelming chaos into a plan of action. So if you're ready, let's dive in to what I want you to know about getting started, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. So I want to get right into the heart of the matter. When it comes to conquering overwhelm and stepping into taking confident action, I think there are two really clear factors that are absolutely crucial. That is clarity and that is alignment. And I'm going to tell you what these are and what they look like. So first, let's talk about clarity. And I'm going to kind of share in this next slide some things you can ask yourself and start thinking about for both clarity and kind of aligning yourself. So picture this. Again, you all know I love visuals. I love analogies. I love just thinking about this stuff in ways that maybe you've never thought about it before. You're embarking on a journey. You're heading off on a journey. And this journey is towards better health, whatever that is for you. Better health, better well-being, maybe even some sort of personal growth, right? But here's the thing. It's always going to be really hard to move forward when you're not actually entirely clear or sure where you're actually headed. Like, what is the destination? Where are you going? What do you want to achieve? And that's why knowing what you want and actually asking that question. I know sometimes we think we know what we want, but actually being very specific with it can be a really big game changer. And I'm not just talking about like vague notions, right? Like, oh, I want to be healthy. Well, yeah, great. I love that. I want you to be healthy too. But like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What does it feel like? Who is that person, right? Crystal clear goals that resonate deep within you. And these can be outcome goals or maybe process goals. Usually it's a combination of both. It's asking yourself, what do I want? What is it specifically that I want? And how do I want to feel? Maybe it's actually getting really deep into behavior change and habit formation. It's who do I want to become? So the big question is just making sure you have clarity, because how can you take those first steps, right? How do you get a map or how do you plug into the GPS where you're going when you don't have a destination in mind? Maybe you have an idea, oh, I want to go to a beach with palm trees. Well, great. What beach? What kind of palm trees? How far is it? Is it 45 minutes away or is it 2,500 miles away? Like, where is this? Where are you going, right? So having clarity. But then we don't want to just stop there because it isn't just about the final result, the final destination, the final outcome. I think, and you've probably heard people talk about this before, and maybe it's been some time since you've checked in with this, but it's also helpful to understand your why. So maybe if you're on with me live and you feel comfortable, I know not everybody wants to talk about these things publicly, but if you feel comfortable, maybe start sharing what your personal goals are right now. Like, what is it that you're currently working on? What are your goals with your health, with your nutrition, with your fitness? And then the next question, and to understand even deeper, it's to understand why. I think understanding your why, it becomes the driving force behind those desires. It's the sort of secret sauce, if you will. It's what fuels your journey when it gets tough. And anyone who's done any sort of behavior change or worked on improving their health with their habits knows that, as beautiful as it might sound to have everything go smoothly from point A to point B, it doesn't usually work like that. There's things that go awry. There's times where things are out of your control. Things don't go as smoothly as you plan for. There's interruptions, there's chaos, there's life stressors. Things don't always go the way that we want them to. And so understanding your why becomes this awesome way to kind of like fuel your journey when things get tough, to sort of turn a spotlight on in the darkness. It kind of guides you and motivates you when things are especially challenging, when motivation is low, when you want to quit. It becomes the thing that kind of anchors you to your path. Jessie shared, my goal is to lower my A1C. Thanks for sharing that, Jessie. I think some of the stuff we're going to cover tonight will help you. And actually one of the questions that came in was about blood sugar as well. And then there's the alignment piece of all of this, right? It's finding harmony between your goals, the things that you want for yourself, the things that you desire, how you want to feel, what you want to achieve, and your core values. So it's making sure your journey isn't just about the destination, but it's a journey that is true to you and aligned for you. And when your goals are in sync with your personal core values, your actions become more purpose-driven and sustainable. I want to kind of pause here because I know some of this may be new for you to think about. And so in the interest of kind of staying on topic for tonight, If you're struggling with clarifying your core values and understanding how to set achievable goals and even connecting with your why, we actually have several lessons inside of Empowered Nourishment, my self-guided nutrition foundations program, that you get instant access to when you join. And it's a big part of what we do also in Trust and Thrive Academy, my small group coaching program. It's to kind of start there. That's the baseline is, what am I doing? What do I want? How do I want to feel? What are my core values? What matters most to me? So that you can have total clarity. And this is something I describe a lot to my clients and the folks I work with. It also helps you to set aside and not feel a sense of should around things that are not for you, that don't align with your goals, that don't align with your core values. So if core values and goal work and even clarifying your why is something that you want to learn more about, I teach all of that inside of those programs. And I think what is often missed in the process of figuring out where to start is just taking a minute and a moment to look inward, to clarify what you want, to dive deep into your why, and to make sure your journey is aligned with what matters most to you right now. And I think all of this, it sort of becomes like your North Star, right? I love this analogy of going on a trip or being on a journey. It's your compass, and it helps you to guide you as you navigate your path from feeling overwhelmed to feeling more confident. So I think as the question of where do I start comes through, if it's something you're often finding yourself asking, I think having clarity in all of these things can be a really important first step before you even get to taking action or deciding what action to take. And now we get to the action piece, right? So I think something that can truly change the game when it comes to overcoming overwhelm, when it comes to diving into taking action, and this is what I would consider to be the short answer to where do I start? The short answer is in the power of just taking immediate, actionable steps. Stop waiting until you can do everything, because that day may never come. And if in a year from now, you're in the same place you are now, are you okay with that? Because if waiting for everything to perfectly align so you can do everything, you may wait a lifetime. So we have to do something. Just do something. Just do something. As simple as that might sound, a lot of times we're not doing it. And so that's why I say that's the short answer here. Pick one thing you feel ready, able, and willing to do, and do it. And it's easy to get caught up in grand plans and the final outcome or these results or the big visions and the sweeping changes that overwhelm can kind of create, like that analysis paralysis, right? So too much thinking and not enough doing. So here's sort of the secret. Sometimes it's the small steps that actually make the biggest impact, but either we think they're not going to do enough, so we do nothing, which when you hear it in sort of hindsight, it's like, oh, small somethings are always better than doing nothing, but it always feels like it has to be huge to us, right? So again, imagine you're standing at the starting line of your journey, and it might feel like there's this insurmountable distance between where you are and where you want to go. But guess what? The short answer to where do I start is to just start. Just take action. Just take one step in the direction of that destination where you're headed. Anything. The key is to just take that first step, no matter how small it might seem. And I think it's helpful to think about it like, what is something I can do today that I will be proud of tomorrow? It's just kind of like proving to yourself you're capable, sort of demonstrating your capacity. Because I'm sure how many of you here are like, sometimes you're super motivated to do all the things, to eat well, to eat the vegetables, to prioritize your protein, to take your walks, to drink your water, to get in a workout. And then other days you have no motivation. You're just like, I don't want to do any of it. I don't care. I'm not interested. The motivation is just like, pfft. I do this stuff every day. And I have plenty of days where I'm like, oh, I know it's good for me. I know I should do it, but like, I don't want to do it. Motivation is fleeting, right? Like, I don't know how many of you have felt that before. I'm sure most of you. It comes and goes like a passing breeze. But here's the thing about action is that action creates its own momentum. Cool word, Beth. Momentum. She's killing it tonight. Momentive is a combination of motivation and momentum, in case you're wondering. It's a new word. You'll find it in the dictionary tomorrow. Motivation is a byproduct of just taking action. It's not the other way around. We often wait for motivation to be there so we can take action, and it just doesn't always work like that. So taking even the tiniest of steps can just set things in motion, and it's like pushing a boulder. It takes effort to start, right? But let's say there's a slight hill. Once it gets moving, it's a lot easier than those first few pushes, and it starts going. It's got the momentum, right? So wouldn't you agree? I'd love to hear if anyone disagrees with this. I love that, Shoshona. Thanks for sharing. Just do the next right thing. Kind of like the world of color one. It just takes one. Yes, exactly. Just one action, just one choice, just one behavior, just one day, just one step, right? So I'd love to hear if anyone disagrees with this, but wouldn't you agree it's better to achieve slow, small change than to stay stuck in the exact same place that you are right now? And a lot of times we don't think about it like that. We just think it's got to be perfect. It's got to be big. So let's break it down. What is one thing? What is one habit? What is one behavior that aligns with your goals? And again, maybe if you don't feel comfortable sharing your goals or your why, maybe you just share like one thing that you know tomorrow you can do that on Friday you'll be proud of, that aligns with whatever your values and your goals are. One tiny, tolerable thing you can do immediately. And if you can, imagine your future self. And if you're struggling with what is that step, imagine this version of yourself you're hoping to become. Imagine your future self, the one you thought about when I asked, what do I want? Who do I want to become? What are the types of things that person does? Can you just pick one of them? Shoshona shared. Gym. I love that. That's great. Whatever becomes your first step, ask yourself then, do I feel ready, able, and willing to do that? Can I imagine myself doing it for at least the next week? That's it. Don't worry about a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Can I imagine myself doing this for at least the next week? David shared riding this bike more. I love that. If the answer is yes, I'm ready, able, and willing, and yes, I can imagine myself doing it for the next week, boom, you have a starting point step. That's it. You have somewhere to start. That's the action you need to take right now. And let that be enough. And don't worry about anything else. And craft some wins and collect some evidence to prove you're capable, to show yourself all of the potential you have, and let the momentum and that pride build more motivation to do more and to build at whatever pace aligns for you. And something you'll often hear me talk about is to celebrate the wins, the micro successes, instead of wasting energy stressing over all the things that are left to do. Which sounds more inspiring? Hey, I said I was going to ride the bike today and I rode the bike today. Doesn't that sound a lot more motivating and inspiring than worrying about and celebrating that than going, oh, well, now I should probably ride it 3 times a week. And if I do that, I should change this. And I'm still not drinking enough water. So what's the point? And I ate like shit. So I should probably quit. That doesn't actually get us motivated, and it doesn't get us moving forward. So whether for you, it's riding the bike, going to the gym, a 5-minute walk, adding in a more protein forward, start strong breakfast, as I call it. Maybe it's one more serving of vegetables in your day, or getting off your phone and into bed by 10 p.m., or setting aside a few moments in your day for some mindfulness or meditation or breath work. These steps might all seem inconspicuous, but they're actually really powerful because they're the building blocks of your journey. So even though I said the short answer is to just do something, don't underestimate the power of immediate action and the might of the small steps, and just continue to remind yourself that it isn't about sprinting. This is a marathon, right? It's creating sustainable rhythm that propels you forward. So now I want to get into, and I know for a short answer that was quite long, but I had a lot to say about it. I want to sort of tell you what I think the long answer is to all of this, of where do I start? Because all of that's well and good, and I think it's something we all know, but sometimes clarifying those first steps or even taking those first steps may not be quite enough. And so I want to kind of dive into sort of a deeper question that often kind of lingers underneath the surface. And again, I talk a lot about the psychology of behavior change and habit change. I talk a lot about our mindset, about our inner narrative, about these kind of stories we tell ourselves and narratives we have, the kind of core beliefs we have about ourselves. There are questions we sometimes need to pause and ask ourselves if we're continuously struggling with getting started or continuing to keep going. So the question is to ask yourself when you're thinking, where should I start? The question you should ask yourself in return is, why haven't I started yet? From a practical standpoint, if you have found yourself stuck, if you're looking at your goals and the things you want from a distance, what I'm about to share, I think, is for you, because it's time to sort of look at the barriers that might actually be part of what's holding you back and offer maybe a way to break through that. This is the sort of behavior change and mindset stuff that I think is often missing from the conversations being had about health and nutrition and fitness, when so much of it is just about the what. So I want to invite you to think about and reflect on this question. Why haven't I started yet? Or if I started in the past, why did I stop? And most importantly, with these types of questions, we actually need to first and foremost practice compassion or kindness for whatever answers come up, because lots of stuff's probably going to come up about how we feel about ourselves or beliefs, core beliefs we have about ourselves or stories. And we need to recognize that if we have habits, behaviors, or patterns of action that we engage in, that we would like to change and we're struggling with changing, we have to recognize with compassion that a lot of times those very habits that we are hoping to change have been there for some time because they served a very important purpose at some point in our life journey, whatever that might be, right? A lot of times the reason that we choose certain foods or behave in certain ways is so much deeper than just, I should know better, or I don't have the right information. And sometimes we just don't have the right information. And so when it comes to embarking on a new journey, I like to kind of look at it like there's these two types of challenges that can be standing in our way. There are technical challenges and there are adaptive challenges. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each so that maybe you can clarify which of these you might be struggling with. So we're going to break it down. So technical challenges often revolve around, as I said, just not having enough information. I'm going to use Jesse's example of lowering A1C. If we don't know anything about how to eat to support blood sugar, how to improve insulin sensitivity, how to lower our daily glucose, our fasting glucose, and how to look at and consider the choices that we're making, we may need more information. It might just be that we don't know the what and the how yet. You might have an idea of what you want to achieve if you're struggling with technical challenges, but you're unsure of the steps or the strategies to get there. So this is where, if you're struggling with these type of challenges, this is where seeking expert advice from your doctor, from a nutritionist, enrolling in courses or having a coach, these things can be really beneficial. They can be game changers for you having the ability to overcome these technical challenges. This can help us to kind of provide the missing pieces of the puzzle as to why we can't get started, giving you the knowledge, giving you tools to move forward. This is a big reason, obviously, why I created all of the content I create, but this is specifically why I created Empowered Nourishment, is I want to offer in the learning content that I do the information piece, because for a lot of folks, this is missing, and this helps with those technical challenges. So what I see a lot of times is most people have incredible intentions of again, I have goals to improve my blood sugar. I have goals to improve my health. I'd like to see changes in my digestion and my gut health. I'd like to have more energy. Whatever those things might be, the intention is most often there and not the problem. But if we're missing that information piece, and what I'm going to get to kind of third, it's really hard to experience any sort of real change or real impact. So then outside of this, and is anyone here on the live call struggling with the information piece or struggling with knowing what sort of the next steps might be or how to take some steps that align with their goals or the things they're hoping to achieve? I'd love to hear if anyone recognizes that for them, that's why they haven't started yet. And then I'll kind of carry on with the adaptive challenges, which is kind of the other side of the barriers that I see. And these adaptive challenges, these tend to be the more abstract, the more complex. This is when you generally know what you should be doing to align with your goals and achieve the things you want, and maybe even the how, So the what and the how or where you could start, you know that. But putting that knowledge into practice, the implementation piece and taking action feels like navigating uncharted waters. And maybe it feels like I don't even know what is standing in my way, or I'm not sure why I keep repeating these behaviors that I know aren't supportive and I know they're not good for me. This is probably a good indication that you are struggling with adaptive challenges. And again, I think kind of different than information, which we can kind of get from, a whole variety of sources, free content like this and podcasts and books and blogs. And again, to the programs and the courses and working with a doctor, working with a dietitian or a nutritionist, same thing here when we're struggling with these adaptive challenges. This is where accountability, support, and motivation from maybe external sources can be beneficial. Having someone in your corner who believes in you, who also helps to hold you accountable, who provides that extrinsic motivation. This is where coaching services can shine. And as I always like to tell folks, my job, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you have no idea what's standing in your way, my job is to help people get unoverwhelmed. I know that's not really a word, but I'm here to help people with this last piece of this kind of puzzle, which is the implementation. Sometimes it's not for anything other than we don't know how to implement the things that we know we should be doing. We're lacking some sort of, support. And so, for me, I am here to help people with that implementation piece and, to help shine a light on the things that you may not yet be able to see, to help you reframe things that you might see as problems as solutions, and to check in with the ways that you speak to yourself that you might just be completely unaware of, and to help you plan ahead for the challenges that we know are coming. So this is, again, where I'll repeat that if you are waiting for the perfect time to get started, but that time never comes, having help might actually be the most effective and most important next step that you can take. And again, I share this every week with you all, but this is where one-on-one coaching and Trust and Thrive Academy both offer this level of coaching support. So whether you are facing technical challenges or adaptive challenges, I think, or a mix of both, which is often the case, the key is with this kind of long answer to where do I get started, the longer answer, I think the key is to recognize that you don't have to navigate the journey alone, that sometimes seeking guidance, whether it's expert advice, whether it's courses or coaching, can help provide you that momentum you need to overcome those hurdles and to make progress. And here's the thing I think is really important to remember is that asking for help, whatever that looks like for you, maybe it's an accountability buddy from a friend or someone at work, whatever it is, it's not a sign of weakness. I think it's a testament to your commitment to growth, to your commitment to these goals that you're clarifying for yourself, because there's so much strength in seeking the support that you know that you deserve. So tonight's a little bit shorter because I want to make sure there's space for questions, or if you have things that you want help on navigating and finding some initial kind of steps. But this is kind of it, that our journey from overwhelm to action is about the empowerment that you take from that beginning, whatever those first steps are. And to remember that action leads to motivation, not the other way around. And it's easy to wait for motivation to strike, to hope you're going to suddenly have this burst of energy to carry you forward. But it's the action, it's the small steps, it's the commitment, it's the progress. Those are the things that ignite motivation. So every move you make, no matter how small it might feel, it's going to propel you closer to your goals. So make it tiny, make it tolerable, and make sure it aligns for you. And so I just want to take a moment to reflect if any of you recognize what challenges may be keeping you from taking that crucial first step. If you recognize, now that we've kind of talked through it, are you struggling with technical challenges? Are you struggling with adaptive? Or maybe some combination of both? And just to remember that you do have the power to overcome them, whatever they are, and to embrace support and guidance when you can access it, if it's affordable and accessible to you. And that just always remember that growth often comes when we embrace discomfort. So as I tell you about some of the ways that I'm available to support you, I want to open it up for some real-time coaching, as I mentioned, and any sort of Q&A. And if you have questions that aren't related, I know some of you can't always be on these lives and you have to catch some of the other ones after the fact. If you have any questions at all, this time is yours. I'd love to answer. If you have something specific you're hoping to achieve in your health and you want some ideas on how to get started, please definitely ask away. I would love to support you. And I just want to take a moment to remind you that if you are looking for a fully personalized nutrition plan for yourself that you are ready to dive in immediately to, Empowered Nourishment is available right away and you get instant access to it. This is my most affordable program. It is a self-guided nutrition foundations program. You're provided with all of the tools and information you need to feel supported on your journey towards sustainable health habits. No food rules, no arbitrary restrictions. You get instant access from everything from foundational nutrition, including what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat for you, how to support your digestion and your gut health, blood sugar balance. We have a whole module on blood sugar balance, a whole module on stress management, habit and behavior change, lots of mindset work. We have an entire module on emotional eating and more. There's actually 9 modules of learning, over 5 hours of lessons, over 20 incredible resources and guides that you can download and take with you on your journey. So all of those links for that can be found in the show notes below this YouTube video. And you'll also find information for signing up for the Trust and Thrive Academy waitlist, which opens up again mid-September, my signature full immersion, 8-week small group coaching, nutritional therapy, and nutritional psychology program. And again, this is where you kind of dive into the stuff we do in Empowered Nourishment, but in a small, intimate, full immersion group setting where you have access to me every single week for all 8 weeks through direct and private messaging, as well as on our weekly group calls. So if you're looking to build a better relationship with food while you optimize your health and nutrition, this is for you. And we're actually this time around doing a very special edition of the Trust and Thrive Academy called Thriving Beyond 40 for women over 40. So I'll be telling you more about that in coming weeks. And as always, I am always accepting a limited number of applications for one-on-one clients looking to start their health and nutrition goals. Let's see. Question came in from Shoshona. Any thoughts on a woman of a certain age and tips with more effective weight loss? I think I would have to know more about the certain age or if there's something specific. One of the things we are doing with this version and this round and this special limited edition version of Trust and Thrive Academy is diving into women over 40, some of the things and considerations and thoughts that we need to consider. A lot of us feel unheard or unlistened to by our doctors. We're all struggling with various things. And it's important to understand how our body functions optimally, how we can work through this time in our lives in this period where things are changing. 46, thanks, Shoshona. I'll be 44 in just under 2 months. So I am with you in this sort of early stages of perimenopause and all of the things that are changing. As it concerns the question of more effective weight loss, as part of this round of Trust and Thrive Academy, I will be including access to, for those who are interested in it, but it's not a requirement of the program, my Compassionate Fat Loss course. The thing with weight loss and fat loss is a calorie deficit will always create fat loss. How we get to that calorie deficit is kind of the unique part for each individual in terms of what will we stick with, what is sustainable. It's making sure to follow sort of seasons. We don't want to stay in a calorie deficit for so long that we experience metabolic adaptation where our sort of metabolism downregulates to a lower intake. So it's making sure that if you're engaging in practices with the intent of fat loss, that you are doing so in a really targeted and tailored way. I think especially for women, because so much is changing with our hormones, we have to consider blood sugar and we have to consider stress. Those are 2 of the most significant underlying root causes that lead to reproductive hormone imbalance. And so, of course, we have to consider that. I think the mechanisms behind compassionate fat loss really depend on the individual in terms of, as I've said a few times in recent weeks, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. It's what are we going to stick with and what are we going to do and what is most aligned with our core values. I've been working out since Mother's Day and I feel like I'm at a standstill. Yeah. And I think thanks for sharing that, because I think a really important thing is that a lot of folks think of working out as the mechanism to create fat loss. And while exercise can increase our energy output, which can sort of create a larger gap between energy in and energy out, nutrition is always going to be the most foundational and important piece. And if we're not creating a calorie deficit, if our nutrition is not on point, if we're struggling with any of these other things that could be leading to metabolic adaptation, then our metabolism may adapt down or adapt to our level of fitness or energy out. And we need to maybe essentially adjust nutrition a little further. So I think if the goal with working out since Mother's Day has been exclusively to experience weight loss, then I would say continue experiencing working out. And if it's a way and a method that you enjoy and it's causing you to feel good, and I would start to maybe take a look at what's happening with nutrition and address, if there's areas where maybe you're eating beyond your caloric needs, or at a maintenance, and maybe things need to shift down a little bit. Brandy said the joys of losing weight and getting older as a woman. Yes, it is. It can be more challenging, that is for sure. And I think, one of the reasons I'm planning on doing this launch of Trust and Thrive Academy is to have these discussions and to talk about the role that our hormones and being a woman who's 40, 45, in our 50s plus, the challenges that it can create and what is true and what is not true. There's a lot of misunderstanding about metabolism. And yes, our metabolism does change as we get older and slow down, quote unquote. But a lot of times it's less to do with our age and more to do with the ways in which we're eating and the ways in which we're moving. We tend to move less and less with every decade. We tend to, as I've talked about here before, we lose muscle mass every, decade. We're losing more and more muscle mass as we age. Muscle is the most metabolically active tissue in our body, and it helps us to utilize energy better. So we need to be, especially as women, we need to be strength training. We need to be building muscle, not only to protect our bones, which can be more fragile as we age. We want to protect ourselves from osteoporosis and some of those lovely joys. But it's also more metabolically active. And so giving yourself an opportunity to explore strength training, if you haven't already, would be something I would encourage you to explore and to bring into your space if that works for you, and making sure it's progressive overload and making sure that you're increasing and pushing your body to limits that work for your body. Jessie said, I would like to see a video or discussion of healthy eating at Disneyland for counting net carbs. We'll definitely be doing, Mark and I have talked about doing some how to eat more healthy or how to make some healthy for you choices at Disneyland. Because, for those of us who go frequently, I think there are times and places and moments in our life when we're maybe on a vacation vibe or special occasion where we might pick more of the fun foods. And some of us are going to Disneyland once a week or more frequently, and it may not be appropriate given our goals to choose the fun foods every time. And so I do think it's, a lot of people like to giggle at me when I go there and I get my Baby Bell cheeses and my little mini mandarins. Sometimes we'll get the salads, but I think, you pick your battles. I don't know that I would ever do content for counting net carbs. It's not really a practice I recommend for most folks. I know when you are working with A1C or lowering your A1C and improving blood sugar, it's a method that some folks prioritize, but maybe just kind of taking a peek at what foods are lower carb or more blood sugar friendly. For me, a big thing with blood sugar is less, and actually one of the questions that came in was about this. I think it's less about total carbs for a lot of folks and more about how you consume those carbs and the source of the carbs you're consuming, which I'll get to that in a second because there was a really wonderful question that came in. Brandy said, how do you get over the self-conscious fear of going into the weight area in the gym? I love that question, Brandy. Thank you so much for asking it. Well, I think there's a few things. I think it's exposure, it's doing it, and realizing that even though it's hard and it's uncomfortable, we can do hard and uncomfortable things, and we've survived every one of the most hard and most uncomfortable days thus far. I would say it's remembering, and this is something when I used to teach yoga, I used to often remind people. A lot of people used to be afraid when I would teach yoga. They'd be like, oh, I want to go, but I'm not very good. And I don't want people to look at me, and I don't want my butt in the air. My butt's too big for yoga pants. And I even remember thinking that at times when I started in my journey. And I think the thing I'll say is the things that we are thinking in our heads about ourselves, about our bodies, our worst fears are probably the worst coming from within our brain. We're saying the worst things we could ever say. And every other person in that gym is wondering, are they looking at me? Are they judging me? Do they think I look bad? Do I look stupid? Most people are so overly concerned and just as fearful as all of us are that I think that we're giving them a lot more credit. Now, this is not to say the world is full of miserable humans that do and say awful things. And when and if that ever happens, and I really hope for your sake it doesn't, and for most people it never will, I would say if it does, whatever that person has to say or believes is more about them than it is about you. And I think that if the benefits from going into a certain area of the gym or going to a certain place in our world or showing up to the beach in a bikini, if the joy that you receive from that is so spectacularly beneficial to your health and your well-being, then everything else can F all the way off, because whatever someone else thinks about you is none of our business. I think that that's something I often remind myself. If someone thinks something about me, I don't know. I don't care. It's not my business. They can think it all they want, but it doesn't change what I know to be true about me. So I think some of it is just doing it and walking out and saying, oh, that wasn't as bad. Like nothing happened. I'm fine. I survived and I did something that I wanted to do. And I feel proud of myself for doing it. And it was so enjoyable and I can't wait to do it again. Shoshona said, I watched others in that area and then tried machines that I felt most comfortable understanding how they work for you. Yeah, I think the machines are always a great place to start if you feel more comfortable there. I also think we talked about this last week. I think having a coach or a trainer, again, if it's in your budget and accessible to you, even if it's just a few sessions to feel comfortable in the movements and the choices that you're making so you can have a little bit more confidence, that's always an option. Jessie said, one reason why I need to count my net carbs is for how much. Oh, I see. Right. I forgot, Jessie. Thanks for reminding me. I know that you are an insulin user. Yes. And I think, once again, I think this is the beauty of like everyone has a different approach, right? Like for net carbs, obviously, if that's helping you, as I was kind of getting at and got distracted, you know, net carbs, I know you know this, but for those listening who don't, it's total carbs, less fiber gives you your net carbs. I think that's going to naturally force you to be making choices where carbs are lower, simple carbs are less frequent, and more complex fiber-rich carbs are kind of the dominant choice that you're making. And so for a lot of my clients who are not using insulin or are not counting to that degree, it's more about swapping simple carbs for complex carbs, making sure there's adequate fiber in the meal. And most importantly, I always have my clients who are working on a blood sugar journey and blood sugar balance to make sure protein is always paired with your carbs so that you're kind of blunting the impact on blood sugar. So absolutely. I know, and I know that can be incredibly challenging somewhere like Disneyland where you don't always know what's in the food and it's not always probably the most diabetic and blood sugar friendly. That actually brings me to one of the questions that came in from Carrie R. that said, I know I need to work on improving my lifestyle to help my blood sugar levels. Diagnosed pre-diabetic, where should I start? And so that actually kind of aligns really wonderfully with this conversation we're having with Jessie. And again, my recommendations for just practical first steps would be, if you're not already doing it, make sure to have at least a palm-sized serving of protein at every meal. You might consider avoiding, I would highly recommend avoid having carbohydrates alone, because of the impact on blood sugar is much greater versus when it's paired with a protein and or fat. Other first steps would be to swap simple carbs for more complex carbs so that the total carbs you're consuming in a day are coming from those complex fiber-rich carbs. It's prioritizing adequate fiber at your meals. It's taking a walk after your biggest meal of the day. usually dinner for most people. Taking a blood sugar walk, as we call them, can be really beneficial for lowering blood sugar levels and bringing it back down to balance. Obviously, just daily exercise, weightlifting can really drastically help to improve insulin sensitivity. Even just daily walks. Yeah, that's frustrating, Jessie, that there's not information online for carbs or calories, especially for folks like yourself who have to think about that. Sarah L, and please continue if you're on the live with me now, please continue to post up any questions that you have. I'm just answering a few that came in that may also apply to those of you. Sarah L asked, I'm dealing with digestive issues and there are so many things online that I read I should cut out or supplements I should take. Where should I begin? And so again, talking about first steps and where to begin and where to start, I would always start with the basics, always. No matter what as we started with this call, start with something. Just do something. Just do one thing. I would say with digestion and gut health especially, it can get a little complex and it can also get a little individualistic. So I would encourage you to start with the basics and just first assess what you're doing in a day. And look and notice if you're eating mostly whole foods. You might consider, while things are maybe not functioning optimally, you might consider removing ultra-processed foods or limiting the consumption of those foods. One of the things I recommend quite frequently for my folks who struggle with digestive and gut health issues would be to food and mood journal for a week or two to track symptoms, to see if there are any patterns or any foods you might want to consider eliminating or doing an elimination provocation protocol approach with. That's one of the most effective ways to be clear, because it's so easy. If you're somebody who follows a lot of folks in the gut health space, it's like, don't eat this, don't have that. It's like by the time you're done, you can barely drink water because that's hardly allowed. It's really individualistic. There are foods when my gut health was at its worst that really caused me great discomfort, that were perfectly fine, very healthy foods for everyone else, that for me were huge triggers for flare-ups. So what's right for one may not be for another. So food and mood journaling, food and symptom tracking can be a really beneficial way to really have clarity, to address and see if you can recognize any patterns. It's asking if you're eating mindfully and calmly and taking deep breaths, chewing your food really well. Looking at stress. Stress plays a gigantic role in our gut health and our digestion. And often with the clients I work with, it's the biggest trigger that they deal with, and most never consider it. Brandy said insulin resistance issues and severe bloating, along with just the amount of food I can eat at one sitting due to WLS. Yes, I know it's a very intense procedure in terms of how it impacts the physical body for the rest of our life after. I know it can be, as I've mentioned before, I've worked with several clients who've had weight loss surgery, and it's, I don't know how you feel about this, Brandy, and I'm not speaking in terms of what I think is right or wrong, but what I will say is I find as a practitioner, it's really frustrating how few doctors tell patients about what to expect after surgery, about what they're doing to your body and the catastrophic, in a lot of cases, not all, but many cases, the catastrophic nutrient deficiencies, the digestive dysfunction, as you mentioned, the insulin resistance, and even just the amount of food. And so there's often like a nourishment issue, lack of nourishment, nutrient deficiencies, but still needing to eat enough to fuel your body and have energy to do the things you want. It is frustrating to me how many people I speak to have had weight loss surgery that were never given a full picture of expectations and of where kind of they can expect things to go in the future, or may see things go in the future, I think is the better way to share that. So I know how frustrating that is and how challenging it can be. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I know it's not an easy thing, and it isn't just a simple do this or do that. Sometimes we have to kind of take it really, really slow. The last question that came in was from Joe, and he said, I have a lot of weight to lose. It almost feels life or death at this point, but I'm so overwhelmed at how many things I'm doing wrong. It feels daunting. So I don't know. I haven't seen anyone named Joe on the live, but Joe, if you're watching the replay, I will say first, thank you for sharing that. And second, And I don't know if anyone else here on the call is feeling anything similar to this, but I know it can feel super big and incredibly uncomfortable to think about how big it is when we have a lot that we want to change. Hopefully some of what we covered on tonight's broadcast helps you to have some clarity with maybe how to consider a starting point or what to begin with. I would say, just to reiterate, the best thing we can do is to not focus on how much has to change or how far we are from the destination or how much we have to do or when the results will come. I think the best thing we can do is to instead focus on the very next step we can take. What is right in front of you right now? And when you can, imagine the smallest step you can take and how that one step, when you visualize it, that one step is getting you closer to this person you'd like to be. And as I mentioned earlier, it's asking, what is one thing I can do today that I will be proud of tomorrow? And it's just remembering, this is something I talk a lot about with my clients and in the coaching programs that I do. It's just remembering to not focus on the long-term outcome or result, because A, isn't enough. I just don't think when things get hard, it can feel so incredibly abstract that it's just not enough. And so it might help to not focus also on what is quote unquote wrong with your body and what is bad. And instead with your body, I meant to say behavior, but I guess that would also go in terms of talking about fat loss and weight loss. But instead seeing it, whatever these behaviors are that you're seeing is wrong, Joe, instead seeing it as a solution along the way that you've had to do for whatever reason, and they are now behaviors that no longer serve you. So how can you possibly bring in more compassion and maybe to start thinking about why you might be making certain choices? And is there something else that may better serve you and the person you wish to become, or this new identity that you would like to uphold? Is there something else that would provide that same level of solution? So I appreciate that question, Joe. Thank you so much. For those of you on the live, if you have any other questions, I'd love to answer them. But as always, before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for all of you being part of this community, for just being here, striving to live your best, vibrant, nourished life, for wanting to seek knowledge. And I just appreciate you. And if you do catch the replay, or if you're watching this video later, if you could just take a moment to leave a comment on the video and to like it. If you want to see more of this content, I'd love if you could ask questions or just let me know that you're enjoying it. It really helps me to know what is resonating with all of you, what you want more of, what you'd like to see more of in the future. You're so welcome, Jesse and David and Shoshona. I really appreciate all of you being here, your amazing shares. I'd love to hear if you get some first steps in, or some first, I didn't realize this was the slide I was on. Well, here we are. Let's go right back to this. It's my face. I'd love to hear if you take some first steps in the next week. I'll check in with you all next Wednesday when we're here live. And I'd love to hear if you do something, if you take some steps, if you get started, and what that getting started looks like for you. But I appreciate all of your amazing questions. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful week. And until next time, be well. Thanks, everyone.